The morning sun painted the wheat fields of New Haven in golden light. Jake Morrison stood on his porch, drinking coffee from a metal cup while watching the sunrise. He had done this every morning for 15 years, ever since the first humans landed on this planet in the Kepler system. What started as bare rock and thin air had become home to 50,000 people. Jake was not just any colonist. He was the colony administrator, which meant everyone looked to him when problems arose. Today felt different, though. The air seemed heavy, like before a storm back on Earth. He could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. Down in the valley, Bill Patterson was already working his farm. His wife Linda was feeding their chickens, while their 2 kids played in the dirt nearby. The Pattersons had arrived 5 years ago, like many families who wanted a fresh start. They grew corn and soybeans that fed half the colony. Bill waved up at Jake, who waved back. Everything looked normal. The transport trucks were moving grain to the storage silos. The school children were walking to their classes. The medical center was treating a farmer who hurt his back. Normal life on a normal day. But Jake knew what others did not. New Haven was more than just a farming colony. Hidden beneath the grain silos were research labs. The farmers were not just farmers. The teachers were not just teachers. Even Jake himself was not just an administrator. 3,000 light years away, another human settlement was waking up. Titan's Rest orbited a dying star in the Vega system. Chief Engineer Katie Wells was checking the mining equipment that pulled rare metals from the asteroid belt. The work was hard and dangerous, but the 30,000 people who lived there had made it work. Katie walked through the main corridor of the station. Workers nodded to her as they headed to their shifts. The walls were thick metal designed to protect against radiation and space rocks. Home was not pretty, but it was theirs. Like Jake, Katie knew secrets. The mining operation was real, but it was not the whole truth. Deep in the station's core were workshops where humans built things the galaxy had never seen. The miners were skilled workers, but they were also something else. Far from both colonies. In a star system controlled by the Zephyrian Collective, War Prime Kethver studied reports about human expansion. The Collective was an alliance of 7 alien species who had controlled this part of the galaxy for 1,000 years. They were proud warriors who believed strength was the only thing that mattered. Kethver looked like a giant lizard that walked on 2 legs. His scales were dark green and his eyes were yellow. Scars covered his face from battles he had won. He had led the Collective's armies for 50 years and never lost a war. The reports about humans confused him. These creatures had spread to dozens of star systems in just 2 decades. They built colonies and trade routes faster than anyone had seen before. But they seemed weak. Their ships were small. Their weapons were basic. They always tried to talk instead of fight. They multiply like insects, said Sub-Commander Vrex, Kethver's second in command. Vrex was shorter, but just as mean. Every cycle they claim more territory. Soon they will be on our borders. Kethver nodded. Weak species should not expand so fast. It upsets the natural order. The Collective had watched humans for years. They saw families moving to new worlds. They saw farmers and miners and traders. They saw people who ran away from any conflict. The humans reminded them of prey animals that survived by breeding fast and hiding. What do you suggest? Kethver asked. We eliminate their furthest colonies, Rex replied. When they see what happens to those who take too much space, they will retreat to their home system. Problem solved. Kethver liked this plan. It was simple and direct. The Collective had planet-killer weapons that could turn entire worlds into molten rock. 2 quick strikes would send a clear message. The humans would understand that the galaxy belonged to the strong. Choose targets that will hurt, but not anger their whole species, Kethver ordered. We want them afraid, not desperate. Vrex pulled. Up star charts. New Haven in the Kepler system. 50,000 farmers. Titan's Rest in Vega. 30,000 miners. Both are far from Earth. Both are defenseless. Perfect targets. The collective would destroy 2 remote colonies and demand that humans stop expanding. When faced with superior force, the weak always surrendered. It had worked the same way for centuries. Back on New Haven, Jake Morrison finished his coffee and walked to his office. The building looked like any colonial headquarters, with basic furniture and local stone walls. But beneath it lay rooms that would surprise any visitor. Jake sat at his desk and activated a communication device hidden in a drawer. The screen showed a woman in military uniform. Admiral Lisa Hayes commanded the Human Defense Fleet from a base near Mars. "Morning report," Jake said simply. "All quiet here," Hayes replied. "Any word from your people?" Jake meant the scientists and engineers who worked undercover as farmers and teachers. Hayes meant the soldiers who pretended to be colonists. They both knew the real purpose of colonies like New Haven. "Dr. Peterson finished the new AI tests yesterday," Jake reported. "The adaptive systems are working better than expected." Linda's team completed another batch of sensor arrays. "They're disguised as irrigation equipment." Hayes nodded. "Good. What about the training exercises?" Bill ran his squad through urban combat scenarios last night. They used the old mining tunnels. Performance is excellent. Even the kids are learning their roles. The conversation lasted 10 more minutes. Jake reported on research progress, equipment status, and personnel readiness. It sounded like a military briefing because that was exactly what it was. After the call ended, Jake looked out his window at the peaceful valley. Families were working their farms. Children were playing in the streets. Life seemed so normal and quiet. He wished it could stay that way forever. But Jake Morrison had not spent 15 years building a farming colony. He had spent 15 years preparing for war. The same conversation was happening 3,000 light years away. Katie Wells stood in her private office, talking to the same Admiral Hayes on a secure channel. "Mining operations are ahead of schedule," Katie reported. "We pulled enough exotic matter last month to supply the entire project. Manufacturing is running at full capacity." Hayes smiled. "Outstanding work. How are your people holding up?" Katie thought about her 30,000 residents. They worked hard in dangerous conditions, but they never complained. They knew what they were really doing here. "Morale is high," Katie said. "Everyone understands the mission. The new weapon systems passed all tests. We're ready for whatever comes." After the call ended, Katie walked to the observation deck. Through the thick windows, she could see the asteroid field where her people worked. Giant machines pulled rare metals from floating rocks. Transport ships carried the materials back to hidden factories. That it looked like a normal mining operation. But Katie Wells had not spent 10 years building a mining station. She had spent 10 years building a weapons factory. Neither Jake nor Katie knew that Cepharian warships were already moving toward their systems. The collective had made their decision. 2 human colonies would die to teach their species a lesson about taking too much space. The dragons were still sleeping, but not for much longer. The attack came without warning at dawn on New Haven. Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when the sky turned white. He looked up to see 3 massive Zephyrine warships breaking through the atmosphere like falling stars. "Emergency. Protocol 7, Jake shouted into his communicator. All across the colony, hidden speakers crackled to life with the same message. People who had been acting like farmers and teachers suddenly moved with military precision. Bill Patterson dropped his farming tools and ran toward his house. His wife Linda was already gathering their children, but they were not running to hide. Linda opened a hidden panel in their kitchen floor and pulled out weapons and armor. Kids, you know what to do, she said calmly. The Patterson children, who looked like normal farm kids, quickly moved to a hidden bunker beneath their home. They had practiced this drill hundreds of times. The first energy beam struck the town center. Buildings exploded into flames and smoke. But Jake Morrison was no longer there. He had already reached the command bunker hidden beneath his office building. "All units, this is command," Jake spoke into his headset. "We are under attack by collective forces. Initiate defensive positions." Across the colony, what looked like grain silos opened up to reveal missile launchers. Fake irrigation systems became gun turrets. The peaceful farming community transformed into a military base in minutes. But it was too late. The Zephyrian ships were massive, and their weapons were designed to destroy entire planets. Energy beams swept across New Haven like giant swords of light. Everything they touched turned to ash. Bill Patterson and his squad took cover behind what used to be the school. They fired back at the ships with weapons that most humans had never seen. The shots hit their targets, but barely scratched the enemy hulls. "We need more firepower," Bill shouted over the noise of explosions. "Negative," came Jake's voice through the radio. "Orders are to maintain cover. Document everything. Make sure the galaxy sees this." The colonists were not just fighting back. They were recording every moment of the attack. Hidden cameras captured the Zephyrian ships firing on civilian buildings. The footage was already being broadcast across the galaxy through secret communication networks. Linda Patterson helped evacuate wounded colonists to underground shelters. She was a combat medic, not just a farmer's wife. Her hands were steady as she treated burns and broken bones while explosions shook the earth above them. How many made it to the bunkers? She asked Dr. Peterson, who ran the medical center. "About 3,000, he replied. "The rest are fighting or dead." Linda nodded. She had expected this. A colony had 50,000 people, but only the essential personnel would survive. The others had known the risks when they volunteered for this mission. 3,000 light-years away, the same scene was playing out at Titan's Rest. Katie. Wells watched through the station's sensors as collective warships surrounded their position in space. "All hands, battle stations," she announced. The mining station's external appearance began to change. Hidden weapon ports opened along the hull. Defensive shields that had been disguised as mining equipment powered up. But like New Haven, Titans. Rest was not built to win this fight. The station's real weapons were hidden deeper in the asteroid field, waiting for the right moment. Katie's job was to make sure the enemy never found them. "Engineering teams, begin evacuation of critical personnel," Katie ordered. "Security teams, prepare for boarding action." The first collective ship opened fire. Plasma beams cut through the station's outer hull like paper. Sections of Titan's Rest exploded into space, taking hundreds of lives with them. Katie felt the station shake under the bombardment. She looked at the screens showing her people dying and felt cold anger build in her chest. These aliens thought they were attacking helpless miners. They had no idea what they had just started. "Send the final transmission," she told her communications officer. The message went out on all frequencies. It was simple and direct. "This is Titan's Rest. We are under attack by Zephyrian collective forces. They are targeting civilians. Tell Earth the dragons must wake up." On Earth, President Claire Adams was in an emergency meeting when the reports started coming in. The Situation Room was filled with her top advisors, including Defense Secretary Ryan Cole and Admiral Lisa Hayes. "Both colonies are under assault," reported General Murphy, head of military intelligence. "Estimated casualties are in the tens of thousands." Adams watched the live footage from both attacks. She saw families running for their lives. She saw buildings filled with children being destroyed. She saw her people dying while the galaxy watched. "Madam President," said Dr. Paul Grant, a man most people had never heard of, "it's time to activate the Prometheus Initiative." Adams looked around the room. Every face was grim. They had all hoped this day would never come. For 30 years, humanity had played the role of peaceful explorers. They had hidden their true capabilities while spreading across the galaxy. "Are we certain this is what we want?" Adams asked. "Once we show them what we really are, there's no going back." Admiral Hayes stood up. "Madam President, they just killed 80,000 of our people. They killed families. They killed children. They did it to send a message that humans should know their place." She paused and looked directly at Adams. "I think it's time we sent them a message back." Dr. Grant opened a sealed briefcase and pulled out a datapad. "The Prometheus files contain everything we need. Ship locations, troop positions, weapon specifications. We've been preparing for this scenario for decades." Adams took the pad and scrolled through files labeled with code names she recognized. Operation Dragonfire, Project Sword of Damocles, the Lazarus Protocol. Each one represented years of secret preparation. "How long before we can respond?" she asked. "The first wave can launch within 6 hours," Admiral Hayes replied. "Full deployment within 72 hours. Adams looked at the screens showing her colonies burning. She thought about Jake Morrison, who had spent 15 years building a cover story while preparing for war. She thought about Katie Wells, who had trained 30,000 miners to be something else entirely. "Do it," she said quietly. Dr. Grant began entering codes into his pad. Across the solar system, hidden bases received new orders. Ships that had never appeared on any registry began powering up their engines. Soldiers who had spent years pretending to be civilians started putting on their real uniforms. The Zephyrian Collective thought they had just taught humanity a lesson about expansion. War Prime Kethver was probably celebrating his easy victory over weak humans. They had no idea. They had just woken up something that had been waiting for this moment for 30 years. "Admiral." Hayes walked to a secure terminal and began typing. Orders. The first message went to every hidden human military installation in the galaxy. "Phoenix Protocol is now active." Repeat, "Phoenix Protocol is active. The dragons are awake." Within minutes, the message reached every corner of human space. On stations disguised as trade posts, weapons came online. On ships pretending to be cargo haulers, combat systems activated. In systems the collective thought were empty, massive fleets began moving. The hunt was about to begin. Captain Ben Walker had been waiting in the asteroid belt for 5 years. His ship, the HDF Retribution, was hidden among the floating rocks where no one would think to look. To any passing scanner, it appeared to be just another piece of space. Debris dot, but the Retribution was not debris. It was a dreadnought battleship 3 times larger than anything the collective had ever built. Its hull was covered in armor that could stop planet-killer weapons. Its weapon systems could crack moons in half. Ben stood on the bridge, watching his crew prepare for battle. These were not ordinary sailors. Lisa Chun, his tactical officer, had spent 10 years studying every collective ship design. Danny Rodriguez, his weapons specialist, knew how to kill things that had never been killed before. Amy Johnson, his chief engineer, had built engines that could outrun light itself. "Captain, we're receiving the Phoenix signal," Lisa reported from her station. Ben nodded. He had been waiting for this message his whole career. Around him, the bridge came alive as his crew began their real work. "All hands, this is the captain," Ben announced over the ship's communication system. "Operation Phoenix is now active. We are no longer hiding. Battle stations." Throughout the ship, 5,000 crew members moved to their positions. Weapon systems that had been powered down for years began charging up. The Retribution's true shape emerged as armor plating slid. A way to reveal gun barrels the size of subway trains. The same thing was happening all over the galaxy. Hidden in nebulas, buried in asteroid fields, camouflaged near dead stars, thousands of human warships were revealing themselves. The collective had thought humanity possessed a few hundred patrol boats. They were about to learn the truth. On Mars, Colonel Steve Parker was briefing his soldiers in a base that officially did not exist. The 1st Human Marine Division was not like regular troops. Every soldier had been genetically enhanced to be faster, stronger, and smarter than baseline. Humans. Listen up, Steve told his assembled Marines. The collective just killed 80,000 of our people. They think we're weak farmers and miners. Today, we show them what human farmers and miners can really do. The Marines cheered. These soldiers had been training for this moment their entire lives. They had studied every alien species, learned every weakness, practiced every possible combat scenario. Steve looked at his roster. Sergeant Kelly Brooks, who could punch through steel with her bare hands. Corporal Mike Davis, who could see in complete darkness and hear a heartbeat from 50 feet away. Lieutenant Jane Walsh, who could calculate enemy positions in her head. Faster than most computers. First wave launches in 30 minutes, Steve announced. Remember your training. Remember why we're here. Make them pay for every human life they took. Meanwhile, Dr. Sandra Kim was activating the most secret weapon in humanity's arsenal. The Quantum Entanglement Communication Network had taken 20 years to build. It allowed instant communication across any distance, something no other species had achieved. All units, this is command, Sandra spoke into her headset. Network is online. You now have real-time coordination with all friendly forces. This was humanity's true advantage. While other species had bigger ships or stronger weapons, humans had something better. They could coordinate perfectly across the entire galaxy in real time. Every ship, every soldier, every commander could share information instantly. War Prime Kethfer was on his flagship celebrating the successful attacks when his sensors officer brought disturbing news. Sir, we're detecting unusual activity in the Sol system, the officer reported. Multiple large ships are departing Earth's orbital stations. Kethfer was not concerned. How many ships? Initial count shows 300 vessels, sir. Still not impressive. The collective had over 2,000 warships. Send a squadron to intercept them. Show these humans what happens when they leave their home system. But the reports kept getting worse. Ships were appearing in systems where humans supposedly had no military presence. Trade stations were suddenly bristling with weapons. Cargo. Haulers were revealing hidden armor and guns. Sir, came another report. We're receiving distress calls from our outposts in the Rigel sector. They report being under attack by unknown human forces. Kethfer felt the first stirring of unease. Unknown forces? What does that mean? The attacking ships don't match any human designs in our database. They're much larger and more heavily armed than anything we've seen before. Before Kethfer could respond, another officer burst onto the bridge. War Prime, urgent message from our base at Arcturus. They say they're surrounded by a human fleet of over 50 ships. They're requesting immediate reinforcement. 50 ships? Kethfer roared. Impossible. Humans don't have 50 warships in their entire fleet, but the reports kept coming. Human fleets were appearing everywhere at once. Collective bases that had never been threatened were calling for help. Ships that had patrolled safely for decades were going silent. Sub Commander Vrex studied the tactical displays with growing alarm. Sir, we're tracking over 3,000 human vessels across 12 star systems. This is impossible. Where did they come from? Kethver stared at the screens, showing red icons spreading across the galaxy like a plague. Each icon represented a human ship that shouldn't exist. He had studied human capabilities for years. They had merchants and colonists, not warriors and battleships. "Get me intelligence files on human military capability," he ordered. Vrex brought up the data they had collected over decades of observation. "According to our reports, humans have approximately 400 patrol vessels, mostly used for cargo, escort and pirate suppression. No capital ships. No planetary assault capability. No long-range strike force." "Then explain this." Kethver pointed at the tactical display, showing human fleets moving across the galaxy. Vrex had no answer. The evidence before them contradicted everything they knew about humanity. It was as if the humans had hidden their entire civilization and were only now revealing their true strength on Earth. Admiral Hayes was coordinating the largest military operation in human history from the command center beneath the Pentagon. Screens showed the positions of every human ship and soldier across the galaxy. "Status report," she requested. "First wave is in position," reported General Murphy. "Captain, Walker's task force is moving toward collective territory. Colonel Parker's Marines are aboard assault ships. All stealth units have reached their targets." Hayes nodded. "Dr. Grant, what's the intelligence situation?" Dr. Grant smiled grimly. "The collective is in complete confusion. They're trying to figure out where our ships came from. Their commanders are pulling forces back from the frontier to defend their core worlds." "Good," Hayes said. "They're reacting instead of acting. That's exactly what we want." She turned to the communication. "Officer, send a message to all units. Operation Dragonfire is authorized. Rules of engagement are weapons-free. Show no mercy to anyone who participated in the colony attacks." The message went out instantly through Sandra's quantum network. Every human, ship and soldier received the same order at exactly the same moment. The dragons were not just awake now. They were angry. Captain Ben Walker received the order as his ship emerged from the asteroid field. The Retribution's massive engines lit up space as it accelerated toward enemy territory. Behind him, a fleet of ships that had been hiding for years followed his lead. "All weapons, prepare to fire," Ben commanded. "Today we avenge New Haven and Titan's Rest." Colonel Steve Parker heard the same message as his transport ship approached its target. His Marines were ready for battle, their enhanced bodies humming with energy and their minds focused on revenge. "Lock and load," Steve told his soldiers. "It's time to show these aliens why humans chose the dragon as their symbol." The collective had wanted to send humanity a message about knowing their place in the galaxy. They were about to receive a reply written in fire and death. The Battle of Rigel Station lasted 6 minutes. Captain Ben Walker's task force dropped out of hyperspace to find 12 collective battleships waiting for them. The enemy commanders expected an easy fight against inferior human vessels. "We're wrong. All ships, engage targets," Ben commanded from the bridge of the Retribution. His voice was calm, like he was ordering lunch instead of starting a battle that would shake the galaxy. The human ships opened fire first. Weapons that had never been seen before cut through space like silver lightning. The collective's massive battleships, feared throughout the galaxy for centuries, began exploding one after another. Lisa Chun watched her tactical display with satisfaction. Direct hits on all targets. Enemy shields are failing across the board. Danny Rodriguez was already targeting the next wave of enemies. "Captain, their armor can't stop our weapons. It's like shooting through paper." The collective ships tried to return fire, but their shots barely scratched the human vessels. Admiral Kethmer, commanding the collective fleet, watched in horror, as his flagship's main guns had no effect on the attacking humans. Impossible, he whispered. Nothing can withstand our plasma cannons. His communication officer brought worse news. Sir, we're losing contact with ships 7 through 12. They appear to be ... gone. Kethmer looked at his displays. Half his fleet had been destroyed in less than 5 minutes. These were not the weak human patrol boats his intelligence had described. These were warships beyond anything he had ever faced. All remaining ships, retreat immediately, he ordered. But retreat was not an option. Ben Walker's ships moved faster than anything in space. They caught the fleeing collective vessels before they could jump to hyperspace. No survivors, Ben said quietly. They wanted to send a message. We're sending one back. The last collective ship exploded in a ball of fire. Rigel Station, which had been a collective stronghold for 300 years, was now under human control. On the planet Sethrak, Colonel Steve Parker was leading his Marines in a ground assault that would become legend. The collective had built a fortress city that had never fallen to enemy attack. Its walls were 50 feet thick and defended by the best warriors in their army. Steve's Marines approached the city walls without fear. These soldiers had trained for years to fight aliens who were bigger and stronger than normal humans. But the Marines were not normal humans anymore. Sergeant Kelly Brooks jumped 30 feet straight up to reach the top of the wall. Her enhanced muscles let her move like gravity didn't exist. The alien defenders shot at her with weapons that could punch through tank armor. The shots bounced off her personal shield system. Kelly landed among a group of collective soldiers and began fighting. Each punch from her enhanced fists could shatter alien bones. Each kick could send a warrior flying across the courtyard. The defenders had never faced anything like her. Wall breach in Sector 7, Steve reported over his radio. Brooks is through the perimeter. Corporal Mike Davis was already inside the city, moving through the streets like a ghost. His enhanced vision let him see in complete darkness. His improved hearing detected enemy heartbeats from hundreds of feet away. The aliens never saw him coming. Lieutenant Jane Walsh coordinated the attack from her position outside the walls. Her enhanced brain processed information faster than any computer. She tracked every Marine, every enemy, every weapon in real time. Parker, you have reinforcements coming from the east, she reported. 200 enemy soldiers, moving fast. Steve smiled. Copy that. Davis, Brooks, you heard the lieutenant. Let's welcome our guests. The battle for Sethrak lasted 3 hours. When it was over, the collective's greatest fortress was in human hands. The alien defenders, who had boasted that their city could never fall, were either dead or running for their lives. But the real shock came when other species across the galaxy saw the battle footage. The humans didn't fight like any civilized army. They moved too fast, hit too hard, and seemed to predict their enemies' actions before they happened. Dr. Paul Gred was running psychological warfare operations from his base on Luna. His job was to make sure every species in the galaxy saw what happened when you attacked human colonies. Broadcasting battle footage from Rigel and Sethrak on all frequencies, his assistant reported. We're also sending the colony attack videos alongside them. The propaganda was simple but effective. First, show the galaxy footage of collective forces destroying peaceful human settlements and killing families. Then show human forces destroying collective military bases with terrifying efficiency. What's the response? Grant asked. 17 species have requested immediate meetings with our diplomatic corps. The Andromedan Confederacy is offering military alliance. 3 collective member species are asking about surrender terms. Grant nodded. Fear was spreading faster than human fleets. Species that had never worried about humanity were suddenly very interested in staying on their good side. On the collective homeworld, War Prime Kethver was facing a crisis that threatened to destroy his entire civilization. Reports were coming in from every front, and all of them were disasters. "The humans have taken the Rigel system," reported Sub-Commander Vrex. "All our ships are destroyed. The fortress world of Sethric has fallen. Our base at Arcturus is under siege." Kethver stared at the tactical display, showing human forces advancing on multiple fronts. Red icons marked collective losses, while blue icons showed human victories. The map looked like a disease spreading through their territory. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Our intelligence said humans were weak. They said human ships were small cargo vessels. They said human soldiers were untrained farmers." Vrex pulled up intercepted human communications. "Sir, we've been monitoring their command frequencies. They're using technology we don't understand. Their ships coordinate perfectly across vast distances. Their soldiers seem to share information instantly. And their weapons? Far beyond anything in our database. They're using directed energy systems that cut through our best armor like it doesn't exist. Their defensive shields stop our most powerful guns without effort." Kethver felt something he had never experienced before in 50 years of warfare. He felt fear. Not just concern or worry, but cold terror at facing an enemy he couldn't understand or defeat. "Get me a communication channel to Earth," he ordered. Vrex looked shocked. "Sir, are you requesting a ceasefire?" "I'm requesting whatever will stop them from killing every collective citizen in the galaxy." But it was too late for negotiations. Admiral Hayes was already implementing the next phase of Operation Dragonfire. Human fleets were moving toward the collective core worlds where billions of aliens lived in cities that had never known war. Captain Ben Walker received new orders as his task force approached the Vega system. "All ships, prepare for planetary assault. Target priority is military. Installations only. Civilian areas are off limits unless fired upon." Even in their fury, humans maintained discipline. They would destroy the collective's ability to make war, but they would not become the monsters who had killed innocent colonists. The dragons were loose in the galaxy now, and their fire was burning away everything the collective had built over 1,000 years of conquest. But humanity's true weapon was not their ships or soldiers or technology. It was their patience. For 30 years, they had prepared for this exact moment. Every diplomatic meeting had been intelligence gathering. Every trade agreement had positioned resources. Every peaceful colony had been a military base in disguise. The collective had thought they were sending a message to weak prey. Instead, they had poked a sleeping dragon that had been quietly surrounding them for decades. Kethver's empire was crumbling, and he finally understood the truth. Humans had never been weak. They had been waiting. 3 months after the attack on New Haven, the Zephyrian collective no longer existed. Their territory now flew human flags. Their fleets were scrap metal floating in space. Their proud warriors were either dead or hiding in distant star systems. War Prime. Kethver sat in chains aboard a human prison ship. The creature who had once commanded 1,000 worlds was now a prisoner waiting for trial. His scales had lost their shine, and his yellow eyes held only defeat. Captain Ben Walker stood before him in the holding cell. The human who had destroyed. The collective fleet at Rigel looked calm and professional, like a businessman reviewing paperwork. "The tribunal will begin tomorrow," Ben informed his prisoner. "You're charged with genocide, war crimes, and crimes against sentient beings. The evidence is quite clear." Kethver looked up at his captor. "I do not understand. How did we fail to see what you really were?" Ben considered the question. "Because we wanted you to see farmers and traders. We needed you to think we were weak, while we learned everything about you. Every diplomatic meeting taught us about your weapons. Every trade deal showed us your defenses. Every peaceful contact mapped your territories. You planned this war from the beginning? We planned for A possibility. Humans have studied war for thousands of years. We know that eventually, someone always chooses violence over peace. We just made sure we would be ready when that happened. Kethfer slumped in his chains. My people believed strength was everything. We thought weak species deserved to be conquered. Your people were wrong, Ben replied. Strength isn't about who can hit hardest. It's about who can survive what comes next. On Earth, President Claire Adams was preparing to address the Galactic Council for the first time since the war began. The other species, who had once ignored humanity, now waited nervously for her words. The council chamber was filled with representatives from hundreds of worlds. The Andromedan ambassador sat in the front row, having already signed a protection treaty with humanity. Behind him, the Centauri delegation clutched formal surrender documents. Adams walked to the speaker's platform, wearing a simple black suit. She carried no weapons and needed no guards. Every species in the chamber knew what happened to enemies of humanity. For 50 years, we extended friendship to this galaxy, Adams began. We offered trade, technology, and cooperation. We asked only to be left in peace to build our colonies and raise our families. The chamber was silent. Every delegate remembered their government's decisions to ignore human diplomatic overtures or treat them as minor players. The Zephyrian Collective chose to murder 80,000 human civilians to send us a message about knowing our place. Today, I want to send the message back. Adams activated a holographic display showing a map of the galaxy. Blue sections marked human territory, which now included everything the Collective had once controlled. This is the new reality. Human space has expanded by 300 systems in 3 months. We now control the largest territory in galactic history, and we took it from warriors who thought they were the strongest species in the universe. The vegan ambassador raised a trembling hand. President Adams, what are humanity's intentions? Toward the rest of us? Adams looked directly at him. That depends entirely on your intentions toward us. Species that respect human sovereignty and treat our citizens fairly will find us excellent neighbors. We offer protection, trade, and technological advancement to our friends. She paused, letting her next words carry across the chamber. Species that threaten human colonies or harm human citizens will discover what the Collective learned. We are very good at war, and we have long memories. The Tau Ceti delegate spoke up nervously. What about the former Collective worlds? Billions of civilians who had no part in the attack. They are now under human protection, Adams replied. We're building schools, hospitals, and infrastructure. Former Collective citizens who accept human law are welcome to stay. Those who prefer to leave may do so freely. This surprised many delegates. They had expected humanity to enslave or slaughter their conquered enemies. We're not conquerors, Adams continued. We're protectors. The territory we took from the Collective will never again be used to launch attacks on peaceful settlements. That's a promise. Admiral Lisa Hayes was establishing the new Frontier Command from the former Collective capital world. The planet that had once been the center of a warrior empire was now home to human families and alien refugees living together peacefully. Status report, she requested from Captain Ben Walker, who had been promoted to Admiral after his victories. All former Collective military installations have been secured or destroyed, Ben reported. We've identified over 50 worlds where species were held as slaves. All have been liberated. Former Collective leadership is either in custody or confirmed dead. Hayes nodded. What about resistance movements? Minimal. Most alien populations welcome human rule after experiencing Collective oppression. The few resistance groups are being handled by local security forces. And our own forces? Morale is excellent. The troops understand we're not occupiers, but liberators. Construction. Crews are working alongside soldiers, to rebuild damaged infrastructure. Hayes walked to the window of her office, which overlooked a city where human engineers worked beside alien architects to build something better than what came before. On the former site of New Haven, a memorial station now orbited the dead world. Captain Jake Morrison, who had survived the attack, commanded the facility that ensured the 80,000 dead would never be forgotten. Memorial log, day 97. Jake spoke into his recorder. Another delegation visited today to pay respects. The Rigelian Federation sent their entire governing council. They wanted to understand what they called the miracle of human restraint. Jake looked out at the space where his colony had once thrived. The world below was still molten rock, a permanent reminder of collective cruelty. I told them it wasn't a miracle. Humans don't fight for conquest or glory. We fight to protect what we love. When someone threatens our families, we become something different. But when the threat is gone, we go back to building instead of destroying. Dr. Paul Grant was completing his psychological analysis of the war's impact on galactic civilization. His report would shape human foreign policy for generations to come. The galaxy has learned to fear human military capability, he wrote. But more importantly, they've learned to respect human restraint. We could have destroyed every world that supported the collective. Instead, we chose to build hospitals and schools. This combination of overwhelming force and disciplined mercy has created something new in galactic politics. Species don't just fear human anger anymore. They trust. Human protection. Recommendation: continue current policy of speaking softly while carrying very large weapons. The galaxy has seen what happens when humans are forced to war. Now they need to see what happens when humans choose peace. Colonel Steve Parker was training the next generation of enhanced Marines on a base built where Titan's Rest had once operated. His soldiers were no longer hidden as farmers or miners. They wore their uniforms proudly and trained in the open. Remember, he told his new recruits, we are the dragons that guard human space. We don't fight because we enjoy it. We fight because others need to know that human families are protected by the deadliest military force in galactic history. One young Marine raised her hand. Sir, what if other species develop weapons to match ours? Steve smiled. Then we'll develop better ones. Humans didn't become apex predators by standing still. We became apex predators by always staying one step ahead of everything that wants to kill us. As the first year of human dominance came to an end, the galaxy had settled into a new reality. Humanity controlled the largest territory in known space. Human fleets patrolled trade routes that had once been hunting grounds for pirates and raiders. Human diplomats negotiated treaties that protected smaller species from larger ones. The dragons had awakened, claimed their territory, and chosen to rule with wisdom instead of fear. The galaxy was safer, more prosperous, and more peaceful than it had been in centuries. But in the depths of space, hidden monitoring stations watched for new threats. Human intelligence networks tracked every military development across known space. The lesson of New Haven and Titan's Rest would never be forgotten. Humanity had shown the galaxy two faces. The peaceful explorers who built colonies and raised families, and the terrible dragons who emerged when those families were threatened. The choice of which face others saw was entirely up to them.